I always looked forward to hitting the road with my son, Tom, just the two of us, rolling down the highway, making memories. But this time was different. We were driving through West Virginia on our way to visit some family, and everything that could go wrong was going wrong. The AC in the car had died, leaving us to stew in the sticky August heat. Tom, who's 9, was getting fidgety, and I wasn't in the mood to play car games. The combination of exhaustion, heat, and general frustration was building, and I just needed a break from the endless miles of road. We'd been on the road for hours, only stopping briefly to refuel, and both of us were in desperate need of a bathroom break. When I spotted a sign for a rest stop a few miles ahead, it felt like a blessing. Finally, we could stretch our legs, cool down, and get some air that wasn't boiling hot. The rest stop wasn't exactly inviting. It was one of those places that looks like it hasn't seen maintenance in a decade. The parking lot was half empty, with a few trucks scattered around. The building itself was small, with weather-beaten siding and cracked windows. Not the worst I've seen, but not exactly the kind of place you'd want to linger. Tom, of course, didn't care. He just wanted out of the car. He hopped out almost as soon as I put the car in park, running toward the restroom area before I could even tell him to stay close. I watched him go, trying to shake off the irritation that had been hanging over me all day. I figured I'd let him burn off some energy while I used the bathroom myself. As I walked toward the building, I had this strange feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't anything obvious, just the sense that everything was too quiet. Even the few people milling around didn't seem like they belonged. But I brushed it off. I just wanted to get back on the road. When we were back in the car, I noticed a white pickup truck a few spaces down. There was a guy inside, a man in his 50s or so, just sitting there looking like he had nothing better to do. His eyes followed us as we backed out of the spot, but I didn't think much of it. People stare, it's what they do. We got back on the highway and things seemed to settle down. Tom was finally quiet, staring out the window, and I started to feel a little better with the windows rolled down. The wind wasn't as good as AC, but it was something. I started thinking about what we'd do once we got to our destination. Maybe grab some dinner, relax for the evening. The rest stop was already fading from my mind. But about 10 minutes down the road, I saw that same white pickup truck in my rearview mirror. It was definitely following us a little too closely for comfort. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. The guy must have gotten back on the road the same time we did. But after a few more miles, it was clear he wasn't just going in the same direction. He was following us. I tried to shake him off by speeding up, but the truck kept pace. Slowing down didn't help either. He adjusted his speed to match mine, staying at the same distance behind us no matter what I did. My irritation was creeping back in, along with something else, something worse. "What's that truck doing, Dad?" Tom asked from the back seat. "I don't know, bud. Probably just some guy not paying attention," I said, trying to keep my tone light. No point in freaking him out. But deep down, I wasn't buying my own explanation. I needed to figure out what this guy's deal was. After a few more miles, the pickup finally pulled up alongside us, matching our speed. I looked over and the driver was staring directly at me, his face twisted in urgency. He was waving his hand, trying to get me to roll down my window. I hesitated. The last thing I wanted to do was interact with some random stranger, especially one who'd been tailing us for miles. But his expression wasn't aggressive. He looked scared, or at least concerned. Despite knowing it wasn't the smartest move, I cracked the window just enough to hear him. "There's something in your car," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. "What?" "The back seat. Check your back seat." At first, I didn't understand what he was saying. But then his words hit me like a freight train. The back seat. Tom. I turned around, my heart leaping into my throat. Tom was sitting there, perfectly still, staring out the window. But just beyond him on the far side of the back seat, I saw the shadow of something, lurking just out of view. My body went cold. I hit the brakes, swerving onto the shoulder as quickly as I could. The pickup truck followed, pulling off the road behind me. I threw the car into park, my hands shaking as I unbuckled my seatbelt and turned fully around to face the back seat. Before I could say anything, the back door flung open and a figure bolted out of the car. It was a man, looking worn down, wearing tattered clothes. He didn't look back as he sprinted across the highway and disappeared into the thick trees on the other side. I just sat there, stunned. It took a few seconds to process what had just happened. "Dad?" Tom's voice was shaky. "Who was that?" I didn't know how to answer. I just reached over and pulled him close, checking to make sure he was all right. He seemed fine, just shaken up like I was. I looked back toward the highway, but the man was long gone. The guy from the pickup truck came running over. "Are you okay? Did you see him?" I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. "Yeah, I saw him." We stayed on the side of the road for a while, long enough to explain the situation to the guy in the pickup and gather ourselves. Tom kept asking who the man was and why he'd gotten into our car, but I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that somewhere between the rest stop and the highway, a complete stranger had climbed into the backseat of our car, hiding under our backpacks and coats, and he stayed there for miles without us knowing. The man from the pickup said he noticed it right after we pulled out from the rest stop. He saw the guy slipping into the car when I wasn't looking. I guess I was too distracted by the heat, the drive, and everything else, and I hadn't thought to check the backseat when Tom got in. We didn't call the police. By the time I thought to, the intruder was long gone, and honestly, I didn't want to relive the whole thing. I just wanted to get back on the road. As we drove away, I kept checking the back seat in the rearview mirror, but of course it was just Tom looking out the window, lost in his thoughts. Neither of us talked much for the rest of the trip. There wasn't much to say. Every time I think back on that drive, I still wonder who that guy was and what he intended to do. All I know is that we got lucky. Lucky that the guy in the pickup saw him, and lucky that we didn't find out the hard way what he was capable of. Road trips are supposed to be fun. You pack your stuff, grab your friends, pick a destination, and hit the road. That's exactly what we did. A couple of friends and I, all crammed into Jason's old SUV, headed to a weekend music festival 3 states away. There was something about being on the open road with the windows down and music blasting that made the miles fly by. It was me, Jason, Sarah, and Maria. We'd been friends for years, and this trip felt like the perfect way to unwind. No stress, just good vibes. We left a little later than we meant to, and by the time we crossed into unfamiliar territory, the sun was already sinking low, winding roads, hills, and trees as far as we could see. There were fewer and fewer cars, and soon enough, we were practically the only ones on the highway. "We should have taken the main route," Maria muttered from the back seat, her phone showing nothing but a blank screen where the GPS used to be. "It's like we're driving through a dead zone out here. This way's quicker, trust me. The GPS will kick back in eventually," Jason shrugged. I wasn't so sure about that, but I kept quiet. I was riding shotgun, trying to help navigate. The sky was getting darker, the roads narrower. Eventually, we passed by an old rusty sign that read, "Bridge 10 miles ahead." "We'll cross the bridge and find somewhere to stop for the night," Jason said. "Shouldn't be too far now." A few minutes later, we saw something ahead, something standing just off to the side of the road. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a deer, but as we got closer, it became clear that it was a person. He was just standing there next to an old mile marker, staring off into the distance. He didn't look like a hitchhiker, no thumb out, no backpack, just a man, standing perfectly still. His clothes were dark, almost blending into the night, but there was something off about him. I couldn't put my finger on it. Jason slowed down as we approached, but none of us said anything at first. "You think he needs help?" Sarah asked. "We're not stopping," Maria said quickly from the back. "I don't care if he's broken down or whatever. No way." Jason kept driving, his eyes flicking to the man as we passed. There was something strange about the way the guy was standing, like he wasn't really aware of the car or us at all. He didn't turn to look at us as we passed. He just stood there, staring into the woods. It wasn't until we were a mile or two further down the road that anyone spoke again. "That was weird," Jason muttered. "Did you see his face?" "No," I said. "He didn't look at us." "I swear," Maria chimed in. His eyes were open, but he wasn't blinking, just staring, like a statue or something. "Maybe he's waiting for someone," Sarah offered, though she didn't sound convinced. "Let's just get across this bridge," I said, trying to push the weirdness of it out of my head. I'm not loving this detour. The further we drove, the more isolated the road felt. There were no streetlights, no signs of life, just trees and road. Every now and then I thought I saw shadows moving in the woods, but I chalked it up to the flickering headlights and my tired eyes. After what felt like forever, we finally reached the bridge. It was old, rusted steel beams, narrow, and barely wide enough for 2 cars. Below, a slow-moving river snaked through the valley, the kind of place that would be beautiful during the day, but was downright eerie at night. Jason slowed the car down as we crossed, the tires making an unsettling clunking noise on the metal. Halfway across, Maria gasped, "Oh my God, no way." I followed her gaze, and my stomach tightened. There, standing on the other side of the bridge, was the same man we had passed earlier. It didn't make any sense. He couldn't have gotten here before us. We hadn't seen any cars, any turnoffs, nothing. He was just there, standing as still as before, his eyes locked on the car now, watching as we approached. "What the hell?" Jason muttered. "Turn around," Sarah whispered. "We should turn around." But there was no way to turn around on that bridge without backing up, and the last thing any of us wanted was to be stuck there. We had no choice but to drive past him again. Jason pressed the gas, speeding up just a little as we passed the man. This time, his head turned slowly to follow us, his eyes never blinking, never leaving the car. As we drove by, I caught a glimpse of his face, a blank, emotionless stare, his skin pale and stretched tight over his features, like he hadn't eaten in weeks. "He's not right," Maria muttered. "There's something wrong with him." No one disagreed. We were all on edge now. Jason kept looking at the rearview mirror, but the man didn't follow us. Still, the tension in the car was thick, and no one dared to break the silence. About 10 minutes later, we saw lights in the distance, what looked like a small gas station or rest stop. Relief washed over me. Finally, we could stop and regroup, figure out where we were, and maybe get a signal again. Jason pulled into the parking lot, and we all piled out of the car, stretching our legs and trying to shake off the weirdness from earlier. The gas station was old, with flickering neon lights and a single attendant inside who barely looked up when we walked in. Maria and Sarah went inside to use the bathroom, while Jason and I stood outside, looking at the map on his phone. "Think we'll see that guy again?" Jason asked, half joking. "I hope not. This road's got some serious bad vibes." As we stood there, I looked around the parking lot. There were a couple of other cars parked by the pumps, but something felt off again. The night was quiet, the air still. Then I saw movement near the tree line just beyond the edge of the lot. It was the man, standing just at the edge of the light, barely visible through the shadows. "Jason," I said. "He's here." Jason followed my gaze, and his face paled. The man was just standing there, watching us, his figure barely visible in the darkness. "We're leaving," Jason said, not wasting a second. He turned and headed for the car, motioning for the others to hurry up. We jumped back into the SUV, and Jason revved the engine, peeling out of the parking lot without looking back. As we sped away, I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror, expecting to see the man standing there, watching us leave, but he wasn't there. "Where did he go?" I muttered. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, looking at me. "The guy. He was standing by the trees. He's gone." Jason didn't say anything, just pressed harder on the gas, and we sped down the empty road. The atmosphere in the car was thick with tension, and no one spoke for a long while. We drove for what felt like hours, trying to put as much distance as possible between us and that man. The road twisted and turned, but no matter how far we went, we never saw another town, another gas station, or even a sign. Just endless darkness, endless road. At some point, Maria asked, "Are we lost?" Jason shook his head. "No, we're on the same road." But it didn't feel like the same road anymore. It felt like we were stuck in some endless loop, driving through the same stretch of highway over and over again, with no way out. Then, up ahead, I saw it again, the bridge. We'd circled back somehow. Jason didn't say a word. He just put the car in reverse and tried to back up slowly. None of us spoke. We were all locked on the figure standing at the entrance of the bridge. It was like we were trapped, unable to move forward. And then, something unexpected happened. A flicker of headlights appeared in the distance behind us. A car was coming. Jason stopped backing up, his eyes glued to the rearview mirror. "Someone's coming," I whispered. The car behind us was getting closer. For a moment, hope flared in the pit of my stomach. Maybe we weren't stuck on this endless road after all. Maybe this car could help us, or at the very least, we weren't alone. But as the car approached, something about it seemed wrong. The faint outline of a car rolling slowly toward us. I turned in my seat, staring at the vehicle creeping closer. It wasn't moving fast, just inching toward us like it was waiting. Jason turned to look too. "Should we stop and let them pass?" he asked, but even as he said it, I knew that wasn't a good idea. Just then, a hand tapped gently on the back window. Not a knock, but a soft tap, like someone wanted our attention without causing alarm. Maria gasped, "Oh my God." All of us turned at the same time. Standing right next to the car, his face inches from the window, was the man. The same one we'd seen by the bridge, the one we had tried to leave behind. He wasn't smiling, wasn't doing anything at all. Just staring, his face pale. Jason didn't wait for anyone to say anything. He threw the car into drive, slammed his foot on the gas, and we shot forward, barreling toward the bridge. We raced across it, the car shaking as the tires hit the metal grates. The bridge seemed longer this time, the other side further away than it should have been. But Jason didn't let up. We didn't look back, didn't check to see if the man was still following us. We just focused on the end of that bridge. Finally, the other side came into view and Jason floored it, speeding down the road until the bridge was out of sight. We drove for what felt like an eternity, the car silent, all of us too scared to even breathe. And then, suddenly we saw it, a highway sign, one we hadn't seen before. It was worn and weathered, but it was a sign of civilization. It pointed toward the nearest town, just a few miles away. We didn't speak until we pulled into the brightly lit parking lot of a gas station. Jason parked the car, and we all sat there for a moment, still too shaken to move. "We made it," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Jason nodded, but none of us felt the relief we should have. Even as we stepped out of the car and into the brightly lit gas station, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us, that we'd only narrowly escaped whatever was out there. As we filled the tank and grabbed some snacks inside, I looked back toward the road one last time. It was empty. Just a long stretch of asphalt leading back toward the bridge, back toward the dark. But something told me it wasn't over, that we hadn't seen the last of him, that one day, maybe on another road trip, on another forgotten highway, he'd be waiting. Road trips always have their own kind of rhythm. You spend the first few hours full of excitement, fueled by snacks, coffee, and good music. Then, after a while, the miles stretch out and everything starts to blur together. That's where we were when things started to go wrong, late into the night, tired and just wanting to get home. It was me and Audrey, my girlfriend. We'd spent the weekend at her parents' place, about 5 hours away, and we were halfway back when the weather took a turn. The rain came out of nowhere, one of those heavy downpours that make it impossible to see more than a few feet in front of you. The windshield wipers were on full blast, but it didn't help much. The darkness seemed thicker, like the rain was swallowing the headlights. "It's almost impossible to see anything," I muttered, leaning forward over the wheel, trying to make out the faint lines of the road. We hadn't seen another car for at least 20 minutes, and the highway felt deserted. "Maybe we should pull over," Audrey suggested. "Just wait it out a bit?" I nodded. There wasn't much point in pushing through the storm if we were just going to end up in a ditch. I spotted a small shoulder up ahead, one of those emergency pull-off spots, and slowly eased the car to a stop. We sat there in the rain, the sound of it pounding on the roof. I turned off the engine and we just sat there. "This is kind of peaceful," Audrey said after a minute, leaning back in her seat and looking out the window. I mean, in a creepy, middle-of-nowhere kind of way. I laughed. "Yeah, peaceful, sure." For a few minutes, we just sat there, listening to the rain. But then, out of nowhere, Audrey's hand shot out, gripping my arm. "Did you see that?" "What?" I replied. "There, outside, by the guardrail." I squinted through the rain-soaked windshield, but I didn't see anything. Just the endless curtain of water pouring down, distorting everything. There was someone. "A woman, I think," she whispered, still staring out into the darkness. I hesitated, wondering if she was just seeing things. The rain and the dark could easily play tricks on you out here. But before I could say anything, I saw it too. A figure, barely visible through the sheets of rain. Standing just off to the side, near the guardrail. The figure moved, stepping closer to the edge of the road, closer to our car. Now I could see her more clearly. Definitely a woman. She looked soaked to the bone, her clothes clinging to her in heavy, dripping folds. Her hair was plastered to her face. There was no urgency in her movements, no sign that she was looking for help. She just stood there, staring at our car. Audrey leaned forward, squinting through the rain. "Do you think she needs help? Maybe her car broke down?" I looked around, looking for any sign of another vehicle, but there was nothing, just the empty highway stretching out in both directions. "I don't know, but this doesn't feel right." "Maybe we should ask her?" "She looks like she's freezing." Audrey's voice was soft, but I could tell she was uneasy too. I didn't want to open the window, didn't want to invite whatever this was closer, but the woman just kept standing there like she was waiting for something. "Okay," I finally said, rolling the window down just a crack. Rain immediately splattered against the side of the car, and I called out, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman didn't answer right away. Then, after a few seconds, she nodded. It was a slow nod, and something about the way she did it made my stomach flip. "Should we let her in?" Audrey asked. I didn't want to, but there was no way we could just leave her out there in the rain, especially if she really needed help. "Yeah," I said reluctantly, "but just for a minute." I rolled the window down the rest of the way and unlocked the door. The woman moved slowly, her arms hanging limply at her sides as she approached the car. She opened the door without a word and slid into the back seat, the smell of wet clothes and something else, something sour, filling the car immediately. Audrey turned around in her seat to look at her, but the woman didn't say anything. She just sat there, staring out the window, water dripping from her hair onto the seat. "Where's your car?" Audrey asked gently. The woman didn't respond. I looked at Audrey, who was now visibly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, where's your car?" I repeated. Finally, the woman spoke, but it wasn't the answer we were expecting. "It's cold," she whispered. "So cold." Audrey turned back to me, her eyes wide. "Maybe we should just drop her at the next gas station," she whispered. I nodded, putting the car in gear. The sooner we got out of here, the better. But as I started to pull back onto the road, I felt something shift in the back seat. Movement, sudden and unsettling. The woman leaned forward, her hands gripping the back of my seat. "It's so cold," she repeated, her voice louder this time, more forceful. I could feel her breath on the back of my neck, icy and too close. "Okay, ma'am, we're going to get you some help," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, but inside, I was panicking. Something was seriously wrong with her. Before I could process what was happening, her hands shot out, wrapping around my throat from behind, her nails digging into my skin. She was screaming now, this guttural, animalistic sound. "Let him go," Audrey screamed, turning around and clawing at the woman's arms, trying to pull her off me. I slammed my foot on the gas, the car jerking forward, but the woman's grip tightened. Her nails were digging in deeper, and I could feel her body pressing against the seat, like she was trying to crawl over it. The car swerved as I fought to control the wheel, my vision going blurry. "Get her off!" I gasped, trying to push her hands away, but she seemed stronger than she looked. Audrey managed to pull her back by her arm, and the woman let out a strange cry, releasing her hold on my seat and falling back into the rear of the car. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I hit the brakes hard, the car screeching to a stop. "We have to get her out now," I shouted. Audrey quickly opened the back door, and the woman, still silent, began to crawl toward us again. Together, we managed to push her out of the car, her body hitting the ground outside. I didn't stick around to see what she did next. I floored the gas pedal, the car slipping slightly on the wet road before we sped off into the night. My throat ached where her fingers had dug in, and I could still hear the echo of her screams in my head. Audrey was breathing heavily, her hands trembling in her lap. "What the hell just happened?" she whispered, finally breaking the silence. My brain was still trying to process everything. The woman, her cold hands, and why she would attack me. None of it made any sense. "We should call the cops," Audrey said. "She could hurt someone else." I nodded. reaching for my phone. But as I looked in the rearview mirror, something caught my eye. In the distance through the rain, I could just make out a figure standing on the side of the road. The same woman, standing perfectly still, staring after us as we drove away. We didn't stop. We kept driving, straight through the night. I called the police and reported the incident, but I didn't tell them about seeing her again in the rearview mirror. I wasn't sure if I'd imagined it or if she'd somehow managed to catch up to us, but either way, I didn't want to think about it. The next day, I checked the news for any reports about a woman found on the highway, but there was nothing. No follow-up, no mention of anything strange happening out there. It was like she had never existed, but Audrey and I both knew she was real. The bruises on my neck were proof enough. To this day, I can't explain who she was. All I know is that for a brief moment on that highway, we let something in that we shouldn't have. Something dangerous. Something not quite human. And even now, whenever it rains at night, I find myself checking the rearview mirror, thinking she'll be standing there. Driving alone at night can be peaceful, or at least it usually is for me. I like the quiet, just me and my truck. But on this trip, somewhere in the middle of rural Pennsylvania, it was more eerie than peaceful. The roads were dark, winding, and deserted. I'd been on them for hours, making my way from Pennsylvania to Georgia, thinking I'd take the scenic route instead of the highways. Big mistake. It was late, well past midnight, and I was running on caffeine and stubbornness. I had a podcast playing in the background, but even that wasn't doing much to keep me alert. It looked like the road ahead would never end, with just thick woods on either side. No streetlights, no houses, just trees. As the miles ticked by, I began to wonder if I should pull over somewhere and catch a quick nap. But there wasn't a gas station or rest stop in sight. The GPS was useless out there. The signal had dropped about 20 miles back, and I had no idea where I was except for somewhere between the middle of nowhere and lost. I was keeping my eyes on the road when something up ahead caught my attention. At first, I thought it was roadwork, traffic drums lined up on either side, and something shiny on the asphalt. I slowed down, squinting through the windshield. The headlights weren't picking up much, just a faint glint of metal reflecting back. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't roadwork. The traffic drums were old and beat up, like they'd been dragged there from some construction site ages ago, and that shiny object, a spike strip, stretched out neatly across the road. My foot hovered over the brake as I slowed to a near crawl, adrenaline kicking in. A spike strip out here in the middle of the woods? That didn't make any sense. There was no construction, no police presence, nothing that would explain it being there. I rolled to a stop a few feet away from the strip, my heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. The road was too narrow to turn around, and there was no shoulder wide enough to pull off safely. My only option was to back up, but even that seemed risky. What if there was someone waiting in the woods? What if this was a trap? I took a deep breath and scanned the area around me. The trees loomed on either side, their branches thick and twisted like they were reaching out to grab anything that passed by. There wasn't a sound, not even crickets. It was the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl like the world had just stopped. Then I saw it. Movement in the trees. At first, it was just a shadow, something flickering in the corner of my eye. But then it moved again. A figure, dressed in dark clothing, stepping out from the tree line and heading toward the road. I froze, my hand tightening on the steering wheel. Another figure appeared, then another. They were creeping toward the road, like they didn't care if I saw them or not. There were 3 of them now, all moving in a loose line toward my truck. They weren't running, but they weren't exactly taking their time either, and they were all headed straight for me. I looked at the spike strip again. There was no way I could drive over that without wrecking my tires, and I didn't have the tools to clear it. My options were limited. Either back up and hope I could reverse far enough to turn around, or sit here and wait for whatever was about to happen. I threw the truck into reverse, my hands shaking as I started to back up. The figures were getting closer, and I could see now that they were all men, their faces partially obscured by the hoods of their jackets. One of them was holding something long and thin. maybe a crowbar or a pipe. Whatever it was, no way I was staying to figure out what they were planning to do with it. The truck's tires crunched over the gravel as I reversed, but backing up on a narrow, winding road in the dark wasn't easy. I kept looking in the side mirrors, trying to make sure I wasn't about to drive off the edge of the road and into a ditch. The men were picking up speed now, their movements more aggressive. One of them started running, and I slammed my foot on the gas, the truck lurching backward faster than I intended. I swerved, narrowly avoiding the trees that lined the road, and then something else caught my eye. A fourth figure standing on the side of the road just behind my truck. I slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a stop. The figure was standing just a few feet away, close enough that I could see his face in the glow of the taillights. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at me. He was grinning. Before I could react, he lunged toward the back of the truck, his hands slapping against the tailgate. I heard the thud of his body hitting the metal, and then the sound of something scraping against the truck's side. He was trying to climb into the truck. Panic hit me, and I floored the gas pedal again, sending the truck shooting backward. I heard the man yell, but I didn't care. I had to get out of there. When I looked back to the front, I saw the other men running toward me. But I wasn't stopping. I slammed the truck into drive and made a sharp turn off the road, aiming for a narrow gap between the trees. The truck bounced and jerked as I tore through the brush, branches scraping against the windows. I looked back, but the men were out of sight now, hidden by the darkness and trees. For what felt like forever, I kept driving off-road, the tires struggling against the uneven ground. I had no idea where I was going, but it didn't matter as long as I was putting distance between me and those men. Eventually, the ground leveled out, and I found myself on a dirt path that wound through the woods. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than where I'd just come from. I slowed down, trying to catch my breath and figure out what to do next. My hands were still shaking, my thoughts racing as I tried to process everything that had just happened. Who were those guys? Why had they set up a spike strip in the middle of nowhere? Was this some kind of trap they used to ambush random drivers? One thing was clear. I wasn't going back to the main road. Eventually, the dirt path led me back to a paved road, far enough away from the ambush that I felt like I could breathe again. I kept driving until I saw the glow of a gas station up ahead. The lights were a welcome sight after the pitch-black nightmare I'd just escaped. I pulled into the parking lot, parked the truck, and just sat there for a moment, letting the reality of what had happened sink in. My hands hadn't stopped trembling. I filled up the tank, grabbed a bottle of water, and got back on the road. This time, though, I stuck to the highways. No more shortcuts, no more back roads. Because out there, in the middle of nowhere, you never know who or what might be waiting. If these road trip horror stories had you gripping the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales. Have you ever experienced something creepy on the road? Drop your own scary stories in the comments. I want to hear them. Stay safe out there, and remember, the next time you hit the highway, danger might be closer than you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.